Hi, my name is Joe and I run games. The game that we are running today, Draw Steel. Specifically, this is Campaign Diary 2 for my Draw Steel campaign called A Study in Effluence. Like effluence, not affluence. Some of my players thought it was affluence and they were deeply confused when everything had slime all over it. This is a pulp cosmic horror style game, sort of like a hard-boiled version of a Lovecraftian story. Isn't that just like Sleepy Hollow? Or like Supernatural? With less pie? This week we pick up where the last session left off, and as with last time, there are lessons. This week's lessons are specifically about Draw Steel. This is our first time getting really elbow deep in the Draw Steel mechanics. This is our first time using Draw Steel for a full-on combat. So we're going to talk a little bit about the mechanics of the game and specifically the things my players learned. I went over the basics with them, but these are things that stuck out to me as stuff that the players had to keep asking me about and getting clarifications on. So these might be things that your players, should you be fortunate enough to have players, will want answers to. So, if you've been wondering, how does this game work? You should go watch another video. MCDM has put out really good videos. Rise Heroes Rise has been doing live streams of their games, and they're really good. The Dice Society has put out several good videos on how these mechanics work, and I strongly suggest those. Links in the doobly-doo. But if you would like a lower quality version with bad jokes and my storytelling attached, you're in the right place. We begin in the city of Fort Sinum on the 8th of Astegi. This is still within the first couple of days of summer. The sunflowers and dandelions are blooming in other parts of Thessalon. Shallow riverbeds and lakes have gone dry, indicating the heat of summer is upon us. But here, this close to the rain wall, these things never go dry. We begin in Marta's shop. Marta's there. And so are the rest of the PCs, because that just makes my life easier. One of the town's two prefects come in. This is Barius Major, the prefect of coin. He is in charge of making sure that taxes get paid. He's also in charge of other stuff, making sure everybody's using legal tender for the most part, that sort of thing. He's mostly an accountant. And what he says is the Chapata farm is behind on their taxes to the tune of something like 10 castrensis of good rice. That's in the vicinity of 25 gallons. It's not much money in rice. There's a long-winded reason for that, but basically this is a family farm. Marta hates this. Marta hates bureaucracy, especially when it impacts family farms. She's a farm girl. Titus wants to know why the taxes haven't come in, and well, as it turns out, the Chapata family hasn't come into town at all. There have been some rumors of raids on the farms out by the wall there, so we also learn that there's a cobbler 3 doors down. We learn that when Barius Major, in a desperate attempt to seem more likable, starts looking around Marta's shop, wondering, is there something here I can buy? She fixes stuff. He says, do you fix shoes? She's like, no, that's a cobbler. I do wood. So unless you want wooden soles. He looks down at his shoes, and of course he has been tracking mud all over her clean shop. He hastily makes his exit. The PCs, of course, head to the farm to investigate. While that's happening, I am prepping the last of the curry for the grown-ups to eat and the mac and cheese for the kids. Quick aside, if you're not sure how to make a good mac and cheese that kids will like, here's my process. You start with 1 part by weight each of pasta and evaporated milk and about 2 parts of water. Toss that into a pot, add some salt, bring it to a simmer. Don't boil it hard. You boil it hard, you're going to burn everything on the bottom because it's going to thicken up when the water gets absorbed by the pasta. You want to simmer and you need to stir it. While that's happening, you shred your cheese. I use about 1 part sharp cheddar, about a half a part Parmigiano Reggiano, and a little more than half a part of American cheese. You can just get that like cubed up at the deli counter, or if nothing else, just use slices. It doesn't actually matter. I would tear up the slices into little pieces, but it doesn't actually matter what shape it comes in. You just need it because it contains sodium citrate, which is going to turn everything into a delicious emulsion that your kids are going to like. To that, you add just enough cornstarch to bring everything together. When I made an entire box of this stuff, I used like a full tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a half of cornstarch, but when I make a half a box of pasta, I use about a teaspoon, maybe a teaspoon and a half, basically just enough to get a little coat on it so that you can tell it's gonna thicken up the sauce, right? That's what it's there for. When the pasta hits an edible texture, you pull that off the heat, add in your cheese, and stir until it makes those gross stirring noises. You might need to add a little bit of water to thin it out. You could add a little bit more evaporated milk if you want, but at this point, trust me, it's going to be cheesy enough. You don't need to worry about the texture too much. Just get it to the point where it's going to feel like a sauce. Some kids like a thicker texture, some kids like a thinner texture. I'm like a thinner texture kid myself, even though I'm a very large kid. This works for grown-ups too. It's good. You can just eat it. Nobody's going to stop you. Anyway, when it's warm, it is smooth and creamy and delicious. My kids like it with penne tubes. Did you know you were going to get a bonus recipe video when you signed up for this? You did. Congratulations. Back to the game. Those of you who peeked ahead and watched my game prep video, my level 1 game prep video for this plot here called I Can't Smell a Rat, will no doubt know a lot of what is happening coming up here. But it's interesting to point out that not everything went the way I had planned. That's like a sub-lesson, but it is a thing that happens all the time. So, the PCs head to the Chapata family farm, and as they arrive, they're coming from the south. See, this is a nice rice farm, this kind of thing. So this rice farm looks nice and dry because this is late in the season, but early in the season, all these little paddies here get flooded, and we are early in the rice season. So we have a bunch of flooded rice paddies leading up to the house. So first things first, I tell the PCs, I draw this whole thing out with markers on a big pad of, have I showed you guys the big pad of, this is really cool. Look at this thing. So Post-it makes these huge easels. This thing is like, what is mine? Yeah, this thing's like 30 by 25, and it's got 1-inch squares right on it. So you just draw whatever nonsense is going on in your game, and you've already got the squares baked in. It's awesome. I use them for all my games, not sponsored. Go get them. It's so cool. Like a couple of different companies make them. It's just the Post-it ones are the easiest ones for me to get, but they're so cool. I love them. I literally have a pad like this for every game I run, and I just take it with me, and then I use I think I have like a set of those like a billion Ohuhu markers, and I just draw the stuff right on there. And sometimes I still have a map, like a Champiku map or whatever, and I'll just pass it around and be like, this is what it looks like, but this is what we've got to work with. And make sure that everybody knows that these little paddy areas count as difficult terrain, right? They're gonna have to have a little bit of a hard time going through those. Unfortunately, they're also difficult terrain for the radenwights, who are already here and are already raiding this farm. This farm is a little smaller than the one that I've got to work with. Hold on, let me show you the map very briefly. I don't think most of these are publicly accessible, so I don't think they're going to mind me showing off their map very briefly. But this is the kind of map they have, right? These are look at how cool these maps are. So my PCs sort of come through the south. Got the house up here. We've got the rice mill over here. We have the paddock for animals over here, this sort of secret shrine up at the top. I'm not going to keep that there the whole time because I don't know that they want me showing their maps off, but it's cool, right? Go check them out. Champiku, they're great. So my PCs show up, and right away they're like, something feels weird. So I have them all make a skill check. I'm like, you can add in animal handling or like farming or whatever. I gave Marta a +2 because she's a farm girl. Not one person rolled above a 10. It was a terrible first roll. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, something's off. You're not quite sure what. Feels weird. Vibes are off. So Vanish uses his ability called I'm No Threat to turn himself into a small ox. He doesn't turn into a small ox, but he looks like a small ox. It's an illusion. And he trundles his way up there and is like, hey, I'm just an ox. I'm no threat. I'm just looking at stuff. But when he gets up there, he realizes, oh, there's something hiding in the paddock. There's something hiding over here. He rolls incredibly on this intuition check to perceive what's going on here. It doesn't do away with the first check. He still doesn't know exactly what kind of situation he's walking into, but he knows people are hiding and that the air is tense, and he can sort of hear whispers from inside the house. Right? The family is hiding in there. What are they hiding from? So he walks up to the house. There is a pot hanging from a nail. There's a couple of pots hanging from nails on the porch of the house. And he kind of just gets a horn up there, and he gets a hand up there, but he looks like he gets a horn up there. Knocks one of the pots down, and the rice wine that had been fermenting up there crashes to the ground, and that is his way of trying to signal to his friends in the back. But all the radenwights are like, "That's the signal! It's on!" And we draw steel. The first thing to make a note of here are the initiative rules, because I had been doing them wrong for quite a while, because I had old versions of the initiative rules in my head. I did them right this time, and here's how they go. It's really easy, right? Most of the time, the side that goes first goes first. But if both sides are trying to go at once, somebody rolls a d10, doesn't matter who. In this case, I picked one of the players, the player of Titus. He rolled a d10, and he got a 1. If he had gotten a 6 or higher, he gets to choose who goes first. Since he got a 5 or lower, I choose who goes first. And as it turns out, the Radenwight Raiders, the Radenwight Raiders want to go first. That's the whole point of hiding. Today's election day in Ohio. By the time you see this, it will be too late to vote, but you should vote. It's cool. The good news is the Radenwights can go first. The bad news is maybe I should have chosen the PCs, if I'm being perfectly honest, because my PCs are way down at the bottom of the map. The Radenwights are kind of all at the top of the map. I have a bunch of Radenwight red eyes that are like hiding on the other side of the roof, right? They're going to launch attacks. I have a bunch of Radenwight mischievers who are hiding in the rice paddocks, but just the top two, right? Because they were doing raiding, so they just jumped in there and they grabbed some little reeds so they could breathe, and they're like hiding out underwater. I need to show you this because I misread my notes. Let's take a look. This will be useful for you, maybe, but it's definitely useful for me. When I was building this encounter, here it is. When I was building this encounter, I start up here. I've got all the Radenwight, I've got the Malice, I've got the cool stat blocks for the Radenwights, and down here, I wrote the encounter objectives, and then I did my encounter math, right? 6 Bruxters, 6 Pipers, and then the Red Eye minions are like 3 points per 4 minions, and I've got 2 of each of those, so there should be 8 Mischievers and 8 Red Eyes, and that's fine. And it wasn't until the middle of the combat that I realized the Bruxter is 6 points, the Piper is 6 points, the minions are each 4 points, like three minions for 4 points. So what I actually had was 6 Red Eyes, 6 Mischievers, 1 Bruxter, 1 Piper. What I made them fight was, and I sort of remember this in the middle, so what I made them fight was 6 Red Eyes, 6 Mischievers, 2 Bruxters, 2 Pipers. I'm probably going to have to go back and give them another victory because this was a much more brutal fight than I had intended for it to be, and it's just because my notes were confusing. So if your notes are also confusing, you should fix that. I went to Printable Minis, and I got these cool little mouse dudes. Can you see that mouse dude? The camera will definitely not focus on the mouse dude, but whatever. I got a cool little mouse dude. They're cute. Those folks make cool little minis. Like, they're not like scary looking. They're very cartoony, but like, man, if you need like 1,000 little mice or whatever and you just want to print them out, they're kind of great. I use them a lot for stuff like this. The problem with this starting point is that now I have the PCs and they can see, that the Radenwights are here. There's just not much that I can do to them. So basically, I had the Mischievers go first and they rush forward and they try to cover as much ground as they can, and basically I could only get one Radenwight into a position where it could make an attack. I probably should have thought through that one a little bit better. It's fine. We move ahead with the battle, and things start to take off, right? So we find ourselves in a position where Vanish is an ox, and he kind of like sneaks in behind the Red Eyes who are watching the PCs, and they're getting ready to like start shooting at him. And literally his first action, because these guys are minions, right? His first action, I want to say he did something like, I think he did 11 points of damage to these guys, and he just obliterated, like, he cleared out this whole back line, and then I think managed to, like, chuck a knife or something in the direction of one of the other minions on the far end. So just completely blew some of their tactics out of the water. Vanish felt like a badass. Minions are great. Use minions. Use more minions than you think you need, because they are going to die fast if your players are smart. And ideally, your players will be smart. Now, I'm not going to give you a blow-by-blow of this fight. There's a couple of things that matter, though. A, the PCs win. Yay! B, Vanish was really the only one doing murder. Everybody else was just kind of taking people out and like leaving them racked in terrible pain or just taking them out of the combat. So after things were done, a bunch of the Radenwights were able to like skulk off into the night, and they were, disappointed but happy not to be dead. That's really great. It's one of the great things about Draw Steel. When you kill someone, you get to decide whether they die. This is a good choice. That's actually exactly the same thing in D&D 5e. And just like in 5e, sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes you're like, I guess I use this ability called decapitation non-lethally. And I think it's totally okay, as the director of your game, I think it's totally okay to occasionally say, yeah, sorry, that guy dies. If you really wanted to dig deep into the Draw Steel mechanics, you could say, well, you took this guy in a single blow down past his, negative winded value, and I think you can say there's just no way that he survives that. Sorry. And it just depends on the type of game you're running, right? If you're running a heroic game, yes, I think it's okay that, Spider-Man kicks a guy off the edge of a building and then somehow manages to stick him to the side of the building before he dies. And that's just whatever. That's just superhero stuff. And this is kind of superhero stuff. I have certainly had games myself over the years where I was like, I'm just going to try to knock this guy out. But I was using like a 7-foot hammer, and I still to this day don't know if I killed that dude. And that game happened 20 years ago. So there are, I think, times when that can be compelling. So, your mileage may vary. But as far as I was concerned, I just let him have it. I let him have it. If they wanted him dead, they were dead. If they didn't want him dead, they weren't dead. The radenwights really are just after food here, so it's not the end of the world. The radenwights, I don't think we're going to kill the PCs. I didn't think it was that kind of combat. But it could easily have been. Whatever. There were a couple of really good moments in this fight. The first one, and I think this is really important, is that in earlier versions of the game, catching your breath during combat was an action, and in the finished version of the game, it is a maneuver, and that means that on your round, you can use your maneuver to use a recovery. That's huge and really important. Yeah, you'd rather be doing other stuff with your maneuver, but it's really nice. Also, you've got your grab, you've got your knockback. These are all pretty standard maneuvers. And the nice thing about the grab and knockback maneuvers is they do have fail states built into them because they're not heroic actions. They're just a standard thing you can do. So at least twice during this combat, I had, radenwights trying to grab people and failing, and that's okay. I actually kind of like when the bad guys fail to do stuff in a combat. It makes it feel like I'm trying my best to wreck the PCs, and the dice just aren't letting me, and that's okay sometimes. One of my favorite things, one of my absolute favorite moments in this entire combat comes when Vanish uses his ability called Clever Trick. This is a triggered action, and it is when an enemy targets you with a strike. You choose an enemy within the distance of the triggering strike, including the enemy who targeted you. The strike targets that enemy instead. And these are, I need you to remember, these are minions. So what happens is, we've got Vanish here. There is a radenwight charging him, and it's going to shoot him with its bow. There is a second radenwight behind him, and a little ways off, preparing to shoot him. One of the radenwights fires at Vanish. Vanish redirects that attack into the first raden, into the radenwight behind him. And it's like, oh, why? And then, as it is dying, fires its shot at the first radenwight in vengeance. That, I need you to understand that he killed 2 of my minions with a triggered action on my turn. That was my turn. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's all right. That's just a thing that happens now. The College of the Harlequin Mask will introduce Madcap Chaos into your game, and I love it. I actually kind of especially love it in this game because I think it's going to have a darker edge to it. It'll be nice. Not that this is the darkest session I've ever run. You'll notice the daytime skies there. Anyway. The other amazing thing that I got to use was I eventually got my malice up high enough that I called in the rally of rodents, and I used all the rats in the area, real rats, like regular-sized rats, and they made a 10-length wall by scurrying atop one another into unoccupied spaces. That wall blocks line of sight for the PCs, but not for the radenwights. What? That's amazing. And the great thing about that wall is I've got a null, right? So she's like blasting dudes around, and the wall has stamina. So one of the radenwights smashed into the wall, did about half its stamina, took another 5 damage himself. He almost kills himself. And then he can just sort of barely be seen through the other side of the wall, like his tail sticking out and stuff. And also just the fact that I had like a 10-meter wall of rats was so disgusting to my players. And when the wall dispersed, the thing I ended up saying was, I need you guys to realize that those rats were just here. They were just here around the farm. And you don't know where they go back to, but they didn't conjure them. Those are just regular rats. And everybody was like, ugh. One of the other truly amazing things that happened during this fight, let me find it. Radenwight Malice. It's cost 3 Malice. This is an ability called Trouser Cut. You do damage to someone, you push them, and if they're wearing clothing covering the lower half of their body, they have to use a maneuver once to pull that clothing up. You have cut their trousers. It's amazing. It is everything you've ever wanted out of a group of rodent-based antagonists. I basically pantsed Marta and shoved her back, and she kind of tripped over her pants. It was really glorious. I liked everything about it. Would 10 out of 10 would use Malice again. That was the best 3 Malice I ever spent. What ended up happening here is that the minions get taken out. My PCs, seriously, they relied pretty heavily on hero points here. So let's cover that mechanic a little bit as well. Oh no! I said hero points. That's because they used to be called hero points. That's the name of the podcast. Hero tokens is the thing that's in the book. You can spend a hero token to grant yourself 2 surges, right? And that's going to increase your damage output. You can spend a hero token to succeed on a saving throw when you would have failed on a saving throw. You can spend a hero token to re-roll a test, which definitely came up. And you can spend 2 hero tokens on your turn when you take damage without spending an action to regain stamina as if you had spent a recovery before you take damage. Fun fact, that doesn't cost you a recovery or an action. It does cost you 2 hero tokens. Now, at the start of the game, you basically get 1 hero token per PC in play, so I've got 4 sitting on the table, and if they were to do something truly stupendous, I would throw another one out there. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know that happened. It was a pretty normal combat. But hero tokens are a thing that at the start of the game, your PCs aren't going to think of because they're not sitting on their sheet, and that's a really big deal. I gave mine a little cheat sheet, like here's how you spend hero tokens, here's how you spend your, whatever, here's some other stuff you can do. But I think getting them into the mindset of using it, you're going to have to know that because that they're going to ask. They're going to be like, what are these for? Can I use these here? And it's not going to be until like round 3 of combat that they're going to start thinking about it. The other thing that you're going to need to have in your head are maneuvers. Because the PCs will have maneuvers on their sheet, but they have more options than the maneuvers that are on their sheet, right? They can use the aid attack maneuver. They can use the catch breath maneuver. Escaping a grab is a maneuver. Grabbing is a maneuver. Hiding is a maneuver. And trying to knock someone back is a maneuver. After a couple of sessions, that's all going to be stuck in their heads, but until then, you're going to have to know this stuff if you're running this game. Just write it down. Make yourself a little DM sheet, whatever. That's what I did. I will throw a copy of the one that I used in the doobly-doo, but it's a really easy thing for you to do, so it should be a piece of cake. But I would say write it down. That way you have it sitting in front of you and you don't have to worry about whether the PCs look it up, because especially in the year of Our Lady, November 2025, they don't probably have a copy of the book in front of them. Almost nobody's got their books. I don't even have my books yet, not the physical books. I have the PDF, but my physical copy is somewhere. It's probably in a warehouse at MCDM getting ready to get packed into an Ajax edition. I already knew going into this that I was getting my books last, but I am going to do an unboxing when the Ajax edition comes because I'm pretty psyched about it. Okay. Eventually, it becomes clear that the PCs are winning. There's like one Bruxter in the back who has been fighting off on the other side of the wall with Vanish, and Vanish is given a recovery by Titus. The Bruxter's at like 4 stamina, so he's looking around. He's like, I'm the only one here. This guy looks pristine and just had 2 of my dudes shoot each other somehow. And he literally just goes, oh, no, I deeply misunderstood. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, sir, to have bothered you. And just scuttles off. He disengages and then uses the rest of his turn to get the fuck off. So he's towards the end of the map. Vanish lets him go. This brings us to the end of the fight. The Piper is alone on the battlefield. All of his people are around him, clutching their heads and or their nutsacks, and he realizes that there is no getting out of this. These people stormed them and took him over in just a couple of seconds, and he's like, all right, fine, we'll go. The PCs don't know this, but his name is Marcel. He's cute. And Marta pokes him in the chest and is like, you will meet me back here at sunset, come alone. And she lets him run off. Then we go inside and talk to the family. So we head into the house. There's a knock at the door, and we see a sort of dusky-skinned, middle-aged man answer the door. His name is Diego, and the first thing he says is, "Hurry inside! There's raiders here!" Well, the PCs tell him that everything is okay outside, and he brings everybody inside hurriedly, offers them a place to sit. There's probably 2 chairs in this house, but whatever, he makes the offer, and he calls for his family to come down. The first thing that happens is that we have coming down the stairs, I would say, this farm's most helpful resident. His name is Franco. He is a 9-year-old boy, and he is very good at farming and driving off raiders and hauling things. The next person down the stairs is Isabel. Isabel is older than her brother Franco. She's about 14. She's very happy to see everyone. She is just a little too cool for them. She doesn't want to appear overeager. We like Isabel. And then, of course, the last person down the stairs is Aunt Lucia. This farm used to belong to Diego and his wife, Marta. Marta died in a border skirmish, and her older sister, Lucia, has come here to help out on the farm. She is older than everybody else. As you can see, she's a little knobbly. She has trouble getting up and down the stairs, but she is a big helper on the farm. Speaking of a big helper on the farm, coming from around a corner is Kip. Kip is a halfling or polder. Kip is the help around the farm, and he is the only person here who is entirely unafraid of what was going on. They have a discussion about what's happened. They have a discussion about the taxes, and it occurs to Titus that he can't go back to the Prefectus with nothing. He can't do that. He can, however, go back to him with half of their taxes paid and then let them pay the other half after this harvest comes in. That is reasonable. They have definitely had a rough time here. A lot of other farms in the area have had a rough time here. The radenwights have been raiding for the past couple of weeks, but this is new. The radenwights have never raided before. You know, they've seen them on occasion, but this is the first time this raiding activity has happened. And so far, they have mostly been scaring people into their homes and then taking their stuff and leaving. Of note, I think, here is that the radenwights have not been raiding like professional raiders. They have been taking as little as they can, and they have injured people, but they haven't killed anybody. That's pretty curious behavior for criminals. Titus and Carinne take the half of the rice that is owed in taxes. They load that up on Titus's cart, and they walk back to town, with Vanish and Marta staying here so that Marta can talk to the radenwight that she had shooed off come midnight. So it's nighttime on the farm. The family is asleep. I don't even think they know that 2 of the PCs are still outside. But in the south paddock, they have a conversation with Marcel, who has returned. He looks much cleaner now. He's in new clothes. He's a little bit done up. He is clearly here to negotiate on behalf of his people, and he is, near as they can tell, alone. One of my favorite moments in the game happens here, where Marta says, you know, you didn't have to attack us today. And he says, well, yeah, but in my defense, we were stealing from those people at the time, so. And Marta says, why didn't you talk to them? And he says, because people don't just let you steal from them. Whatever. And it kind of flusters Marta a little bit. But eventually she gets some information out of him, and what she learns is that the radenwights have a lair, a burrow, not too far from here. Basically, they just followed the river from the softwood on the river that flows through the wall. They just followed it here, and this is the first farm they found. It's not the only farm they've been raiding, but it's the first farm that they started raiding because it was along their river. He tells Marta that they had to leave their burrow because it was cursed, because all of the leaders of their people started showing up with no heads. And he knew that if he waited around any longer, his head would be the next to go. So he took his people and he left. And now they are raiding because they can't go back home. He says, honestly, if we could go back home, we wouldn't have to do this at all. So Marta and Vanish decide, well, they're going to have to check it out. They get some directions from this guy. He's like, honestly, just follow the river. We just tore through the metal bars underneath the wall. You guys are really good at building walls. Not so great at building metal bars. They decide they're going to go check it out, and they're going to head back to town with the rest of the PCs. Now, I jumped the gun on this a little bit, but that's okay. As they are heading back to town, they see something ahead of them in the wood. Some figure walking. It's dark, though. The trees are obscuring the canopy and the moonlight overhead, and they can't quite make out what's going on until they get closer. And they see a body, a human body, wearing a house dress and some slippers, and it has no head. And it's just wandering around, and every time it bumps into something, it stops and it checks the ground, and it paws around on the ground looking for something, and then it gets up and walks again, and eventually this thing just wanders off into the woods, and they have no idea what to do with it, so they just let it go. When we get back to Marta's shop, Titus and Carinne are basically sitting around trying to learn more things about Carinne's background, but Titus has training in culture. And what we really find out from this is mostly that Titus knows a lot about tea. It's kind of a surprise. They come inside, and he's been doing a 20-minute lecture on the way different people brew tea, which Marta finds hilarious. Marta and Vanish start talking to everybody about this headless body that they saw and how all of the Radenwight leaders have been losing their heads. And at this point in time, we do learn something about Carinne. We know that she has training in the monsters skill, because everybody makes a knowledge roll, but she is the one that understands that when a big monster takes your head off and you keep walking around, that is the work of a bread beetle, a fierce giant with no head that wants to borrow yours. So tune in next time, and we're going to see if we can't find one. Anyway, if this sounded cool and you liked it, there's going to be links in the doobly-doo to MCDM and Draw Steel, and you can go get it for yourself and play it. It's awesome. I think it's online somewhere. You could actually just grab the whole thing online and then try it out that way. There's tons of cool modules and community content, so there's tons of ways to play this game. If you thought the story was cool and you want to see more stuff like that, I write fantasy novels set in this particular setting. And there's links in the doobly-doo to my stories. You can buy the books there, or you can read my current book, The Sundered God, one chapter at a time. I'm publishing the whole thing online for free because I want people to read it. I do campaign planning videos and other Draw Steel content here, so stick around. Say something. One way or the other, I will see you next time for further studies in Effluence.